are very excited to welcome Annalissa Vicencio to our Alumni Career Chat series today. Annalissa is joined today by members of our career development team, including myself, Megan O'Connor, Employer Relations Coordinator, and our lovely office/marketing coordinator, Olivia Marriott. And Annalissa graduated from Manhattanville College with honors in 2010 with a degree in biology with a concentration in neuroscience. And currently she works as a board certified music therapist and licensed creative arts therapist at the Children's Hospital at Montefiore in the Bronx. And her work as a music therapist was also recently highlighted on ABC7 New York and on News 12, the Bronx. She is also currently pursuing her doctorate degree in rehabilitation sciences at NYU Steinhardt, and also works as a holistic health coach for Whole Health Power. And during her time at Manhattanville, she was actively involved on campus with WMVL Radio and the Tri Beta Biological Honor Society. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today about your career journey so far and your time at Manhattanville.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So it sounds like you have a very full plate. I don't know how, you manage all of that, both jobs and then also working towards your PhD. So that's amazing. Could you take a moment to just describe for us your current roles as a board certified music therapist and licensed creative arts therapist at the Children's Hospital at Montefiore, and sort of how you're balancing that with your doctorate work and then also your work as a holistic health coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I currently work for the Children's Hospital at Montefiore. I'm the only music therapist there. And basically, through the modality of music, I help children and their families to feel well. We have a huge normalizing present. So if you can imagine, just being poked and prodded and being sick, just bringing in music can help them feel more comfortable. Usually they might be at school playing, right? We want to encourage all of that. And we can use music for any type of goal, whether it's mind, body, and spirit. So if it's a physical goal, to help them tolerate the physical treatment, the medical treatment. If it's an emotional goal, through the licensed creative arts therapy credential that I have, I can be the primary psychotherapist. And sometimes it's easier to process trauma, not verbally. In fact, we know from so much research that so much of it is in the body and in our nervous system. So, creative arts therapies are an amazing way to get embodied and to process trauma that way. And being hospitalized is a traumatic experience in and of itself. And obviously through music, we can address any transpersonal, spiritual goals as well. And sometimes it's just helping people just be, sitting with them. I'm not fixing, I'm not curing. My personal orientation is not like I'm going to prescribe you specific music, but it's creating a therapeutic relationship with my client in a way that's humanistic and valued, and that helps them with their overall wellness, as well as dealing with any condition that's brought them into the hospital. I've actually been working for Montefiore for more than 4 years now, and before I worked at the Children's Hospital, I worked primarily with adults on inpatient psychiatry units, and there we had a variety of group where I try to integrate all of my training, including in other creative arts therapies such as psychodrama, also training in drama therapy. I was dealing a lot with addiction there, so dual diagnosis, addiction, and mental illness. And it's really beautiful, the creative arts therapies, in my opinion, because we can really get a holistic feel. And that delves right into my private practice through my sole proprietorship known as Whole Health Power. You can check me out. And I really believe that healing, right, is within the person. So I'm more of a holistic mind, body, and spirit practitioner. And so that's what I do in a nutshell. And to me, this all kind of merges together to my what I would like to do with the doctoral program, since I've used music therapy a lot, especially for rehabilitation, whether it's physical rehabilitation, whether I'm co-treating with a occupational therapist, a physical therapist, or a speech and language pathologist, or psychiatric rehabilitation, is really to help my client achieve liberation, freedom. And a lot of my work is resource oriented within the lens of, to me personally, social justice, especially in these times, because so many of my clients are, I'm working in the Bronx where I grew up, and many disenfranchised populations. So it's to help empower them and then to go beyond.
So wonderful. Very inspiring. And I know, so you were a bio major, so I know you must have gone after Manhattanville and did some other training as well to lead you to this place before your doctorate.
Yes. And it's funny, I feel my doctorate program right now is me making kind of like that return to my original roots in science and in research. Long story short, when I graduated in 2010, my father got really, really sick. I didn't like jump right away into grad school, into a neuroscience program. I love neuroscience, by the way. And, it was hard for me to make a living on a bachelor's degree alone in neuroscience. Like it was getting paid like $10 an hour. But I
Mhm.
ended up finding myself in these positions that allowed me to take care of my family and be present for my dad, who did pass in 2010, using music.
All right.
I got positions like working with in a psychiatric facility, like as a social work assistant, or as well as working in a school for special needs, using music, teaching music, teaching math and science actually, but through music because I needed to find more creative ways to explain the content in a way that would stick. And in my own personal healing and grief with my dad's passing, I came back to my identity as a musician, which, by the way, I want to make a plug for Manhattanville. Part of the reason I went to Manhattanville is because of its liberal arts curriculum. Like, I didn't have to try out for a conservatory or be like a music major to minor in music and to learn. I took all the music courses I could besides private lessons, but taking comprehensive musicianship. I'm not sure if that course is called the same, but just getting my basics and my theory down. I was able to do that while doing a bio degree as well as taking the psych courses that I needed to. And I eventually found that I just loved music. If I didn't do music, I wouldn't be able to be my fully most expressed self. And I learned about music therapy when I attended a conference called Music in the Brain. So it was like merging my two loves, music as well as neuroscience. And I found what was called Nordoff Robbins Music Therapy, which has its home at NYU. And I saw this autistic child, this beautiful, precious child, for the first time, who was nonverbal, communicating with somebody. And they were improvising this music. He was singing intonating with his voice in the tonal center of this improvised key, like this music that they were just making improvisationally. And I was like, wow, this to me, there's something healing and special there. And that's what led me to become a music therapist.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I know you mentioned some courses that you took in Manhattanville, but were there any other like really defining events or opportunities or just anything from your time there as you reflect back that you would want to mention as well?
Yeah, oh gosh, there's so many. Well, having nostalgia thinking about the my participation with the radio show at WMBL,
Oh, yeah.
just having that freedom to be expressive with my most creative self. I actually used to I think they gave me an unofficial award for best news show. I would talk about the latest peer review articles while playing my favorite music at the same time. That was really important, to have that, find somewhere on campus that I could just be myself. So that was one. Participating with C-Step was huge for me, especially as a person of color and coming from the Bronx and participating with my peers. Uriel Reed used to be the head of that back in the day. I guess it's almost more than 10 years now. And he supported me. He supported me in getting internships at SUNY Optometry. So I got firsthand experience on what it was like to, work or at least shadow clinicians on an interdisciplinary team. And that I remember using for my master's degree application, like writing about that clinical experience. And when I was working, they didn't just do, your typical eye exams. They were working with people with learning disabilities or strabismus and that related to your eyes and musculature of your eyes. And the clinicians there, to get children to comply or to, have it be a less traumatic experience, they would play with them so that, the essence of creative play was huge. So having those clinical opportunities were key. the bio and the psych program, I'm going to make a shout out for Dr. Chung and Dr. Todd and also Dr. Santucci in the psychology department. I was able to get a research internship at the University of Maryland. So I had firsthand experience in knowing what it was like to work in a lab, to collect data, to analyze data. My rotation in the bio department for the senior thesis project at the time, that started in my junior year, and then all of the senior year was huge. So I knew what I was getting involved in. I think just that hands-on experience. Some classes such as the biological bases of behavior in the psychology department. I don't know if it's still in existence today, but it was a required course that everyone dreaded. I ended up becoming sort of a supplemental instructor for the course. So having the opportunity to teach back what I knew and what I learned and things that I was passionate about. So really love science, I love biology. And then, but within this holistic context of, how does, what happens on the chemical and biochemical levels, how does that impact our behavior was huge. And it's led me to my PhD right now because my research experience, as well as my desire to go back to teaching and to form a career, a scholarly academic career, those experiences were invaluable for me. And just to get this cross-disciplinary experience in bio, psych, music, as well as the drama and theater courses that I took, just like that whole well-rounded liberal arts experience is kind of making it full circle because the rehabilitation sciences degree at NYU is interdisciplinary by its nature.
That's great. Thank you so much. It's so interesting to hear your career path, about your career path, and how all of your, interests were able to come together in this way. I think is so amazing. What have been the most challenging and rewarding moments in your career so far?
It's a great question. I can only speak for this moment, what comes up to my mind. Challenging moments. I would say, before I even identified music therapy as something that would bridge my passions, because I do use my training in biology and neuroscience clinically, because I can understand the nomenclature that all the physicians are talking about when I go sit with them for, rounds, meetings, and that sort of thing. I think when I first graduated, it was just being willing to tolerate, like, where do I find employment? How do I apply my position? I had to literally go through a quarter life crisis. And if anyone's hearing me and experiencing that, you're not alone. It passed for me, and the likelihood that it will pass for you, just be true to yourself. I did a lot of self-healing work as well, and along with grieving my father's loss, but I joined coaching groups. It's part of why I'm a coach now on, how can I find a vocation, right, that is true to me, that's not only going to pay the bills, right, but there was a philosopher who once said that vocation is the intersection of the world's greatest need versus with, where I could be of most service and my greatest passion. And when I found music therapy, I instantly knew that it was it. Same thing with coaching. That comes from my own personal healing experiences, dealing with polycystic ovarian syndrome, dealing with, metabolic issues. And at one point I had full-blown type 2 diabetes as well, and was able to, reverse it completely through lifestyle-related change. I knew that there was a calling for me in the health realm, in the healing realm, and in the liberating realm. So finding the support in the community, it took me a few years, and it took me a few years to find the NYU program to know that that was the master's degree that I wanted. And that I also knew was going to lead to employment in New York City. I took 2 whole years to decide if I wanted to apply, and I wanted to commit because it was very expensive. I did not want to take student loans on. I had some growing up to do to just be financially savvy about it. And the same thing with the PhD program. So that was a huge challenge. Like, how do I, get the bottom of my Maslow's pyramid, food, shelter, all the basics, while being true to myself to get, self-actualized. And I think the most rewarding, there's so many points in my career, but I just recently, just sharing music with a child or another person, or anybody at any age, just watching them be their most human selves, regardless of their conditions. I was working with a 3-year-old who had a heart transplant and had cancer and a stroke on top of that, but was still willing to sing with me, like that resilience, just that passion. or when I work with a stroke patient or someone struggling, living with dementia or Alzheimer's, and they can barely speak or barely remember, but then they remember their favorite song from, their formative years, their early young adult years, and they start singing with me passionately as if we were in, like, I don't know, 1935. And so rewarding to me that I get to be witness to that and to, share that moment, and maybe their family share that moment for healing and bonding that can never be taken away from them.
I think that's wonderful. And I love what, that you sort of followed your intuition and your gut and your passion. And I think sometimes these outside factors, sometimes play into what we're doing, whether it's family or money or income, but deep down, what you're supposed to be doing in some way. So I love that you followed that. And also, what you said about these sort of moments with your clients, they might seem like small moments, but how impactful they really are. So I think that's so great.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
fantastic. And then who would you say is your biggest influencer or someone that you look up to?
Another really beautiful, great question. Well, the first person that's coming to my mind right now, her name is Benedicta Skyby. She was my music therapy internship supervisor, and then became like a mentor and a professional good enough mother for me. I just had so many beautiful reparative experiences with her, and I just love the way she practiced, her outlook on life, and the fact that she was so giving to me. She passed in 2018, which is a huge loss for our community, but her legacy lives on in every sort of interaction, clinical interaction, or even professional interaction, or just human to human. She was just a beautiful, beautiful human being. And I just don't think there's any replacement for that kind of mentorship. So any educational professional programs, like, the mentorship I got from Mr. Uriel Reed at Manhattanville, as well as Benedicta, is just something really, really special about that. And that's what I look for if I'm going to go into any training programs going forward, or any sort of continuing ed, those mentorships.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing, and sorry for your loss, but it sounds like, she made such an impact on you and your career. So I'm glad, you have those moments to remember her. What would you consider to be the most useful piece of career advice that you've received?
I can't not talk about money, especially in the middle of a pandemic. I think for my master's degree, I knew after doing so many interviews, like, it's maybe one piece of advice is it's okay to ask for an informational interview, right? If someone's gonna, whether it's a admissions officer, whether it's a professor in a program, wherever, right? An HR specialist, someone, the worst thing they'll say is no, and sometimes no means next opportunity. But I did my research, and I took the time I needed to, if I was going to invest all this time and money into, say, my master's degree, I knew it was one of the best, especially within New York. And so much of my money was going to be going to the alumni relations and the connections that this organization had, especially for employment. I just can't stress that enough, that it's not about greed, but financial health to me is self-care. So knowing that I would be making back and a sustainable living, right? And I knew I was going to have to take on specific type of loans that I'm giving service to now. The public student loan forgiveness program is in effect. I've been at Montefiore for over 4 years. I don't plan on leaving, or these kind of positions. I'll have 6 more years left of my service, and it's an honor to be in service that way. So, but making sure that I can get my most basic needs met is so important into the equation than just like haphazardly signing up for more training and education, which I definitely paid for, unfortunately, but I've learned my lesson. And to also not lose sight of who you are in your essence. Like, again, I joined a group coaching program specifically centered around vocation, and it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to take your time and to do the research. And I've worked so many little tiny jobs, but the mindset of every part is a stepping stone to where I want to go in the future was very helpful, because it wasn't in vain. Even if I was working a job I would never think I'd want to work, it was never in vain.
That's great. I love the piece that you said about the informational interviews. We really encourage our students to do that, especially, connecting with alums, whether it's through the alumni office or on LinkedIn. Most people are willing to share their stories and their time, especially like you said, during this time. So I feel like that's really important. And how else are you going to learn if it's something that interests you or not?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And you never know where those connections can lead. So that's so huge and important.
That's
so
right. And even if it's over email, obviously in real time to me is better.
Yeah.
But those links, just the connections, and to make sure that this is what you really want. Like that hands-on experience, there's no replacement for that.
Absolutely. Awesome. And then what skills would you say are necessary for success today in the field of rehabilitative sciences and health? And how do you think that the requirements within the field are changing?
Let me also gear that to specifically music therapy, and then I guess I'll talk about rehabilitation sciences only because I'm still training in it. And it's more of a research scholarly degree. My number one tip, if someone wants to become a music therapist, again, hands-on. This is an experiential art form. I would suggest volunteering right away. It's a little challenging with COVID right now. So many places are, everything's on telehealth or telesessions, but maybe you can volunteer to be the Zoom, admin, and you can mute people or that sort of thing. Any way you can get involved in that is just not only knowledge for you, do I really want to do this? But then you can share that on your application processes. So just getting in the field is key. For music therapy, there's definitely a few courses. If you're still an undergrad and you're not in a music therapy program, abnormal psych and developmental psych, super, super important as prerequisites, especially, and any of psych courses that you can take, because on the graduate level, group dynamics, we are also being trained, at least in the state of New York, to be primary psychotherapists. So we want to be trained in the same basics that verbal therapists and psychotherapists are being trained as, because think about, a master's degree program is only 2 years. You can only fit so much, to know that you can always do continuing ed and all of that extra stuff to specialize later on. But, besides the hands-on experience, as well as just getting some core courses such as developmental psych and abnormal psych are super, super important. And especially if you're a music therapist, and the way our credentialing board is set up right now, you need advanced proficiencies on your primary instrument. And then you have to be able to have basic competencies on the guitar, voice, and piano. And it doesn't have to be crazy complex, but meaning you can accompany yourself while you're singing to even, if anyone out there knows, 1-4-5 chords, simple songs, right? Nothing too complex, but that's an important thing. And if you want to check out the AMTA, the American Music Therapy Association's website, just to get more information, it's musictherapy.org. That's always great. And those informational interviews, there are so many different types of music therapists out there, some behaviorally oriented, some more, humanistically oriented or transpersonally oriented, like myself. We're very, very vast, even though there's not that many of us, but there's a good amount of us. As for the rehabilitation sciences, I can only speak to my degree, in that this specific degree at NYU is interdisciplinary. So for me, it attracted me because I personally have had experience and I love co-treating with physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech and language pathology. So if there's someone who really loves these kind of rehabilitative disciplines and loves combining them, then you may want to check that, degree out. And I'm still training in it, but it is a scholarly degree, so you need research experience behind that. I wouldn't apply if you don't have any research experience, since it is a scholarly degree. And if you're really drawn to teaching and to doing research, that's what that degree calls for.
Awesome.
Great.
Some great advice.
I'm just curious for myself, when will your degree be done? Do you have a plan? I know with doctorate degrees, sometimes it's like, well, this amount of years, but it can stretch out.
I'm going to put it out to the universe that I'm hoping to be done with my coursework in 2 years, and then it would take another 2 years on top of that to finish my dissertation. So I technically have 8 years to finish my degree. I started it in 2018 because I'm doing it part-time and working full-time. So putting it out there, I have about 2 more years of coursework as well as my candidacy papers to submit, and hopefully 2 years after that, or however long the dissertation takes, as long as I get it done. And this isn't advice for anybody, even still an undergrad, with your like capstone projects, your theses, whatever you're doing, that kind of, penultimate step. It doesn't have to be your life's work. Just get it done. Like, be true to yourself,
Good advice.
but get it done. Don't make the same mistake I did.
Yeah.
By harping on it. Just get it done.
Absolutely. That is great advice. Everyone really listen to that, because I know I did the same thing for both my bachelor's and my master's. I like killed myself over both of those theses, and it was just, it was rough. So, I mean, I was happy with the result, but just like you said, like, get it done, and you have so much more time in your life to develop those skills and, just really sharpen yourself and what you really want to do. And, you want to expect that as you go on, your work is going to be even better and greater and with more knowledge. So this is just like, even though it's the capstone of your degree, it's really just the beginning, because you have this whole career ahead of you. So,
exactly.
That's really great advice from both of you. I feel like I did the same thing too.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my goodness. And really, for most people, it's the first time they've ever done a big, huge project or
like
research
that,
piece like that before. And so how do you, it's their first time doing it. Of course, it's going to be, very challenging. I think you kind of answered the question of what you would recommend to someone interested in your field of work. Is there anything else you would suggest to,
Yeah, absolutely. It's just kind of almost on like the practical side. If you're looking to be a creative arts therapist in the state of New York, or anywhere in the US or even Canada, looking to where you could get licensure. Do they even have a license, right? And this applies not just to music therapy, but it could be drama therapy, art therapy, dance movement therapy, poetry therapy, or psychodrama, all the creative arts therapies. I think it's really important to know, like, are you going to, you may get trained in New York, but are you going to be wanting to live in another state? Do they have a license there? What makes music therapy also unique is that music therapists can practice on the bachelor's level. So they're not, at least in New York, we're not licensed to do psychotherapy on the bachelor's level, but you can still work in nursing homes, schools. You can work in a variety of settings without having that advanced degree. You may not get paid significantly, but I think that's what separates us music therapists from other disciplines. Everyone else is kind of like a master's entry level. Either way, master's and above, that's what's allowed for psychotherapy. So state licensure is super, super important. I don't think it's too early to start inquiring about job prospects. Like, it's a reality today, and it's always been a reality, and it's okay to be practical. It's not being selfish, because if you're going to be in a service position like a music therapist, right, whether you're a frontliner in a hospital like I am or in another setting, we have to take impeccable self-care. Burnout is so common and it happens easily. So, if I know that my basics and bottom lines are taken care of, I'm not going to be thinking about that in my sessions. I can be completely present for my client.
And I'm sure with COVID and everything going on with that, self-care has become even more important. I'm sure it was, things are a little bit better with hospitals now, but I can imagine in the springtime it was definitely very challenging. So thank you for being on the front lines, because I know it's very tough. Especially in a situation like that and that no one's experienced before.
We're still healing. Probably gonna be
I'm
healing.
sure. I told my stepsister the other day, sister-in-law, I was like, I think I'm still processing March. I'm like, we're in September and I'm still like trying to figure out what happened in March. So yeah.
Absolutely. And then lastly, are there any resources or books or podcasts? I know you had mentioned musictherapy.org, or anything else that you recommend to students who are interested in the field?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many. I would definitely start out with, the AMTA national website. And the more, I guess, just search around on the internet if there's any type of music therapy. Like you can Google Nordhoff Robbins music therapy at NYU. There's a few YouTube videos out there that for me were like transformational to watch these sessions.
Yeah.
And then I would literally reach out to them and email people, ask for the informational interviews, because I think it's the person to person connection that makes a huge difference. And then you'll learn the different types of training around the country, but also just getting involved with volunteer work or even being paid to be an assistant in some way will give you valuable knowledge for yourself, as well as things you can kind of, you know, make your application stronger with. Like I have music therapy experience, you know, let me into your program. For kind of what I was talking about before, for the quarter life crisis that I went through, there was a book. Oh my goodness. I think it was, I have to look this up. It was, you know, I might have to email you guys because it was really profound. But again, this was for me like more than 10 years ago. They used the word, or Christine Handler, she's a well-renowned coach. And there was a really powerful book about, you know, dealing with quarter life crises. And I don't know, maybe like, you know, if this is linked to some sort of social media platform, I can like type the link later or, but there are a lot of books out there to help with that sort of thing. I don't know why I'm like thinking of this or being attracted to it in this moment. Or, you know, I think I also was reading like it's a Susie Orman book, like The Broke, the Young, the Fabulous, that I really think that financial health, like, I mean, I'm going to be completely honest, as a music therapist, we're not like rolling in hundreds of thousands of, you know, we're not making six figures, or the entry level positions aren't like that, but there is a capacity, you know, once you get your license and once you get established, you can create your own private practice. It's not an easy thing, but you know, I didn't come into music therapy because for the money, let's just put it that way.
Right.
And it's, the same dynamic. My husband's a professional musician, right? You know, there's all of these challenges in and of itself, like the starving artist life in New York. You have to be passionate about what you want to do. And I think finding support through, you know, safe spaces and groups, whether it's, you know, a group of, you know, for me, you know, when I was in my mid 20s, it was that coaching group about, you know, what do I want to do? You know, I have this bachelor's in neuroscience and I can't find employment that's like going to pay my rent. So I needed that safe space. It was a group of women figuring out what our true calling was for vocation. I might make a post about this because it's bringing me back to those days. And then, you know, if you're like me, I'm part of a music therapy group specifically for Asian women, right? For people of color. And, you know, especially right now, how can I support Black Lives Matter? Anything that where you're going to find a safety net, I think is super important, and group support. I wish I had more resources on the top of my head. I apologize, but I can definitely send more resources as I think
that's
of them.
all such helpful information for sure.
Yes, this has been wonderful. We really appreciate your time. I was really looking forward to it, and I was so impressed, you know, with your bio and also how you are able to manage all of your different jobs and your doctorate degree at the same time. I was so impressed. So,
Yeah.
Can I say just one more thing about that?
Yes. Yeah.
And then I think the way to address that, to me, if I had a piece of advice for just anybody, is prioritization. So for me, before the job and the PhD, and even before my husband, my spirituality has to come first, and my self-care, right? And then it's my family, and then it's all of that other stuff. So when I'm in integrity to my priorities, the kind of like the time management stuff falls into place, and being accomplished. I'm more productive when I'm laser focused and I have my priorities straight.
That's really great advice, I think, for time management, putting yourself first. And then, I mean, how else are you supposed to do everything else if you're not able to put yourself first?
Oh, and I'm so sorry. I know my brain is all over the place. I do have one more thing that I would love to share.
Of course.
Some things on campus that were elemental to my well-being while I was on campus at Manhattanville. And I did, you know, most of my time I was on campus, and other times I moved out and I was a commuter. The counseling center or the student health center, I don't know if it's called the same thing, but just that support. You don't need to have like a diagnosis or a pathology.
Right.
Like there is no shame in asking for support and help. So I just wanted to make a plug for that. That's super important, especially when we're going through a pandemic. Utilize those services that are available to you, or what was called like any of the services on campus, the help center, the Duchesne Center, but it's still called that, anything. that community support, just use
That's
it.
great. It's student health and counseling, so it's SHAC, and then Duchenne is now Clark Center, so they switched. So Craig is still there. Father Will left about a year and a half or 2 years ago. So they have a new director now. But Craig, I went to Manhattanville too, and Craig is just like Craig. He's still himself.
Yes, absolutely.
Very passionate. But yes, I think those resources are very important. So to mention. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was wonderful, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
Have
you.
a
Nice
good
to meet
one.
you. Take
Nice
care.
to meet you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.